Charlie Kirk puts the pro-abortion argument to shame once and for all. Guys, this is going to be a lot of fun. I think you're going to like it. Something I've noticed with this issue of abortion is that the people who are in favor of it generally don't really know anything about it or know very little about it. You see the same thing with certain other issues. The Second Amendment is one that really comes to mind. The people who have a really passionate view on it of either being anti-Second Amendment or being pro-abortion, they don't know anything about the subject. And it just shows every single time. They just don't. We're going to get right into it, guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. But first, everybody, do me a big favor here. Like our video, share it around, and if you're new, subscribe to the Resist the Mainstream YouTube channel so we can keep bringing you guys this great content. And for those of you who are returning, thank you so much, and God bless. We're so happy to have you back. As always, everybody, I'm your host, Darian. Let's get into the clip.
So this is really a question about abortion.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would say I'm more right on the spectrum, but I've never been able to get over the abortion thing. If it's a goal of the right to lower crime levels, why won't they get behind federally legalizing abortion in all states, not making it a states' rights issue because
I know this.
You know the empirical evidence showing that it reduces crime.
First of all, that's a eugenics argument. So it's like saying we should kill all the prisoners. Okay, so I don't believe that.
Okay.
Right? So you shouldn't just kill people just because it lowers crime. That's very inhumane. And number two, I also just so I understand, you're technically correct in this, and I also think it's really creepy that people use it, not you.
Okay.
It's from Freakonomics is where this comes from,
that's right.
where they wrote an entire chapter about how abortion lowers the crime rate. So you extrapolate that, you just kill enough people in black and brown neighborhoods, the crime rate goes down. That's effectively the argument they make.
Speaking of eugenics and abortion, you guys know who the founder of Planned Parenthood was in her history? Margaret Sanger was a huge member of the KKK. She loved it. She was a white supremacist. And the reason why she founded Planned Parenthood was, in her own words, to essentially eradicate the black population of the United States. Bet you they didn't teach that in public school. I know they didn't for me. When I was in public school, we were just taught about how Margaret Sanger was this great lady, a folk hero of the feminist movement of the left. She's great, first wave feminist, such a great lady. She cared about women's rights. She gave them control over their own bodies. What a wicked lady she was. And now we're propagandized and believing she's a good person. That is scary. And, you know, I won't go too much about it right now, but I really think in this country, if we just showed people what abortion really was, actually fairly presented both sides of the argument in our school system, rather than just having your liberal public school teacher tell you that, well, it's a woman's body, you know, it's her choice, she can do whatever she wants. I think we'd have many more pro-life people than we do today. I sincerely believe that.
Isn't it also like, I know a lot of people probably argue with you about abortion with the quality of life thing, and then you'll probably say you can give birth to the baby and maybe put it up for adoption or try.
Well, of course, there's twice as many people on the adoption list.
The quality of life of these people, right? It's not great, so they become...
It's a full spectrum thing, and we're conflating two different issues. We have a very simple human rights issue, where you have human beings that are alive that are being killed. That's abortion. And then you have other issues in front of that. So I just ask you on the abortion issue, when does life begin?
Right. I think we'd probably disagree. I do think...
When would you say life begins, though?
I don't know the exact month, but once they develop a heartbeat or a brain...
Yeah, so like 6
absolutely.
weeks, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so that's like extreme right-wing, like pro-life...
Okay, no.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm not putting you on the spot, and I know you're supportive. I think it's important that, like, if we're not willing to fight for those in the womb that we can't see, that we can't observe, then we're just hypocrites, right? And then we're just like, what good are we talking about human rights issues? And so, yes, as far as lowering crime...
Let's not forget the Constitution promises a right to life.
Crime, we talked about this ad nauseum today. The number one way to lower crime is to put dads back in homes.
Yeah.
Number two is more police on streets. Number three is put actual bad criminals away for a long period of time. Number four is we need to fix our educational system, which is a complete disaster. So, but if you told me this, like, hey, Charlie, we can go into Black America, and if we just kill a couple million people, the crime rate goes down. I mean, that's sick. That's abortion.
Right. So then this is just the last.
No, I'm just being like, I just want people to think of it that way.
I get it. Yeah. I know. I have friends I've talked to about that, but so like with IVF, like every potential, every time a guy like off, right? Like that's a potential kid.
But it's not a fertilized egg, though.
Right. It's not a fertilized egg, but prior to 6 weeks, when that baby doesn't have
it's a human being once the egg is fertilized, once an embryo is fertilized.
But they say potential life, though, because things could happen to that baby in the womb, like God forbid, but it's
you're a
still
potential
not,
life, though. I'm a potential life.
I'm a real life, because I'm alive. I was a potential life. Right?
When did you stop becoming a potential life?
When I was... So let's say for the sake of the argument, when I got a heartbeat, right?
Okay, so 6 weeks, got it.
Sure.
But why
Prior
that definition? But like, why do you think then? You have to have some standard by which you say then, not brain waves, not breathing.
Okay, so I would say heartbeat because more likely that baby's going to be born. I would say if it...
So this is exactly the issue with not drawing a very clear and consistent moral line when it comes to the right to life, and in this case, it being abortion. You can say, for example, well, as long as the fetus isn't conscious, doesn't feel pain, abortion is okay. I've heard that argument a lot. Well, that leads to another question. Well, what if somebody is in a coma? They can't feel pain, they're not conscious, you can kill them, right? It's okay. Well, no, that's different. Well, why is it different? You just made that argument to apply to a baby. Why is it different in the case of somebody who's 80 years old? After all, they have less life to live. Doesn't matter, right? You can see where I'm getting at with this. You need to have a very clear line or it just falls apart. It doesn't make any sense.
If it has a heartbeat,
no, at 6 weeks, the baby cannot survive outside the womb. At 21 weeks.
No, yeah, absolutely. It just has a better chance.
Okay, so you're talking like viability. So after,
sure.
like you're talking about miscarriages, potential viability after 6 weeks. Got it. So the process of development, though, starts at conception.
Right.
Right? So if we must be philosophically and morally consistent, we must say that's when life begins, not some other arbitrary other thing that occurs. For example, my son is 4 months old. Mm-hmm. He's completely dependent on me, completely dependent on his mother, can't hunt, right? Can't do his own food, right? Also is still like his head is still coming together. I don't know if you know that with newborns, right? The development process is not over. It's just beginning with him. So we say that birth is when you enter the world. Your being actually started 9 months prior to that, right? Then you add these characteristics along the process of development. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's not an easy argument. People think it's okay to dispose of life you can't see that's small, but doesn't that make us like really cruel and evil?
No, yeah, I understand. And then the extreme cases of rape, or just in cases of when a baby's going to be born in a really, really shit circumstance, young
Doesn't
parents,
matter.
unfit.
Who cares?
So what would you recommend to those people if
Put it up for
raped?
adoption. Put it up for adoption, number one. And there's 2 million people on the adoption waiting list right now. But it is never the right thing to murder if a baby's going to be born into a slum. By what moral paradigm is that ever defensible?
If the baby's growing up and then it's, I'm not going to say babies don't have feelings when they're in the womb. I'm sure that there's science that they do.
I believe they have souls, right?
Okay, well, what if it's 1.5 years old and it's dying because it can't eat and it can't get nutrients because its mother can't breastfeed?
That doesn't happen in this country. It doesn't. We have an obesity problem, not a starvation problem. We have food stamps. We have food shelters. In this country, that's not an issue. Now, maybe in sub-Saharan Africa, that's a better argument, for sure.
But so you would just prefer like adoption though and stuff?
Well, adoption, or it's like take responsibility for your orgasms. Like don't get.
But a baby shouldn't be like a punishment though, right?
Amen.
Exactly. A baby's not a disease or a tumor, so stop trying to remove it like it's a tumor. A baby's not a punishment. A baby's a blessing.
Right.
What an amazing blessing to be able to bring life into the world. You see yourself in that baby, and as someone who's had 2 kids, it changes you. And for those of you that don't have kids that are like, shaking your heads, you have no idea what you're talking about. How all of a sudden you have new conviction, new energy, new spirit, new meaning, new depth, new understanding, where you have this baby that you're responsible for, and you're like, that's gonna outlive me. I'm gonna raise that child. And you're like, oh yeah, I think it's okay to abort it because it's really small and I can't see it. Like, basically you're saying like the Holocaust would have been fine as long as everyone would have been shorter than you.
I love Charlie's point right there about treating human life with respect and revering it for what it is. There's this trend I've noticed lately with hating children. It's really pervasive and it's profoundly disgusting. You notice it all the time in casual conversation. Ugh, I hate kids. They're so annoying. They stink. They're irritating. Blah, blah, blah. I don't want one. I'm never gonna have one. Airports, that's another example. People always complaining, oh, there's a baby crying in the airplane. I hate it so much. Why can't we have baby-free airplanes? Ah, God, it's so terrible. And I'm just sitting here thinking, dude, deal with it. At the end of the day, that baby is going to be the one that one day is wiping your ass, excuse the French, when you're too old and decrepit to do it for yourself. And obviously you're not going to have your kid doing it for you because you hate kids and you didn't have any. So show some gratitude.
Right?
I mean, I don't really understand that, but
but think about it. I mean, if it's a small baby and it's not as developed, I mean, by what moral standard is abortion okay? We don't murder based on size. We don't murder based on location. It's not okay to kill people in Milwaukee but keep people alive in Madison. Environment doesn't mean anything. Doesn't matter if like where your current environment is, your moral worth, or your degree of dependency, right? We don't go to old people's homes and start just popping off rounds on people that are, have Alzheimer's or dementia. It's like by no other moral standard do we apply to our existence, do we apply to abortion, because abortion deals with something that makes people so uncomfortable, which is that it deals with sex and pleasure and regret. And we think it's okay then to just kind of sweep a mistake under the rug, something you regret. I'll never think about it before, but there's a victim in that circumstance.
Right, but something you'll regret, something that you would consider a mistake, is a baby. And so obviously you're saying you'd want to have that baby born, but like a person shouldn't regret and mistake and then look at this baby and think about that.
That's where you have to take responsibility for your actions. And again, you can put it up for adoption, you can give it up to family members, but under no moral standard should we as human beings ever espouse, should you be able to have evil just to make yourself feel better.
Here's a crazy concept. You don't want a baby, you don't want a child, you feel you're not up to it? Don't put that little thingy in another thingy that I can't say right now. It's that simple.
Just to make your life easier. By no moral standard is that okay. And if you think that moral standard is there, then we can have that discussion, right? Yeah. But we all know it's not true. You guys are all decent, good people, obviously.
Okay, and then final thing, just what was the ultimate ruling that passed Roe v. Wade?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So Roe versus Wade was never a piece of legislation. So it was never voted on by Congress. It was never signed by a president. It was done by the Warren Court or the Burger Court. I think it was the Warren Court. I forget. It's one of the two. And it was a decision that said basically it was Jane Roe, and then there was also Jane Doe's two decisions, Roe and Doe, that happened one next to each other, that basically said that you have a national right to abortion except in the final trimester, late term. Now, other states instituted that, so you have a national right to be able to do it. So you saw the abortion industry. Now, what Dobbs did, which was the decision that set this whole thing off, Donald Trump put Amy Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch on the Supreme Court. They looked at the interpretation. They said, wait a second, this is a states' rights issue. States can determine it. This is not a national issue. Congress never voted on it. Therefore, there's no national implications. Supreme Court doesn't just get to make a law that implicates all citizens, so they brought it back to the states. That's all that Dobbs did. Agree or disagree? That's just
I didn't even know.
Yeah, for sure.
But why is it what's the benefit of making it a states issue?
Well, first of all, it's the correct constitutional interpretation. Second of all, from those of us that look at this as a human rights issue, it allows states like Oklahoma and Texas to get rid of abortion so more babies can live.
Okay.
So, but in states like California, Minnesota, and probably Wisconsin, almost no restrictions whatsoever.
I agree with Charlie's point that it shouldn't be a federal issue, but I actually kind of disagree about the whole states issue thing. At the end of the day, we have a right to life. That's outlined in the Constitution. I think that's pretty clear. Point being, a federal ban on abortion would not be anti-constitutional, as far as I'm concerned. Get as angry and upset as you want, guys, but that's just how I see it. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. As always, please be sure to comment below. Let us know what you liked about the clip, what kind of stuff you want to see in the future, and we'll see you guys again soon. Thanks, and God bless.